This actually happened to me. It's a story I rarely tell, but the wound, even years later, still feels fresh whenever I think about it. I stood in my childhood bedroom, the scent of lavender and old dreams clinging to the lace of my wedding dress, a gown I'd painstakingly chosen, saved for, and envisioned myself walking down the aisle in. My fiancé, Michael, was waiting for me at the church, blissfully unaware that in less than an hour, the dress I was supposed to wear would be revealed as a cheap imitation, a cruel trick played by the one person I should have been able to trust the most, my mother. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. The morning had started like any other wedding day, a flurry of controlled chaos and giddy anticipation. My bridesmaids, Sarah and Emily, buzzed around me, their excitement infectious. My hair was perfect, my makeup flawless. Everything felt right. We were at my mother's house in Glendale, California, a charming Spanish-style bungalow on a tree-lined street that always smelled faintly of jasmine. It was where I'd grown up, where every milestone, every celebration, every heartbreak had unfolded. And it was where I thought this beautiful new chapter of my life would begin. My dress, a custom-made ivory satin and lace masterpiece from a boutique in Beverly Hills, was hanging in a garment bag in the spare room, carefully preserved. It was the dress, the one that made me feel like an actual bride, not just a girl playing dress-up. It cost a small fortune, a fortune I had paid for myself, meticulously saving from my graphic design job for years. My mother, bless her heart, had offered to keep it safe until the big day. She'd even insisted, saying her house was more secure, and it would be a sweet tradition for me to get ready there. I'd seen it just last week, still pristine. Or so I thought. All right, ladies, moment of truth. Sarah chirped, reaching for the garment bag. My heart fluttered with a mix of nerves and pure joy. This was it. The culmination of months of planning, years of dreaming. Emily handed me a glass of champagne, her eyes sparkling. As Sarah unzipped the bag, a collective gasp filled the room. But it wasn't a gasp of awe. It was a sharp, stunned intake of breath. The dress wasn't mine. Not really. The silhouette was similar, yes, but the lace was cheap, synthetic, and the satin had a dull, almost yellowish sheen. The intricate beadwork I'd fallen in love with was replaced by flimsy sequins. It was a knockoff, a terrible, poorly made imitation. My stomach dropped. The air went cold. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and touched the rough fabric. It felt alien, wrong. A wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't my dress. My mother, who had been bustling in and out of the room, ostensibly getting things ready, stopped dead in her tracks, a forced, brittle smile on her face. "Oh, sweetie, isn't it lovely?" she chirped, her voice a little too high, a little too strained. A little different from what you remember perhaps, but just as beautiful. My mind reeled, trying to process what I was seeing, what I was hearing. A little different? This was a completely different dress. And then a sickening realization hit me. The boutique where I bought my actual dress had a very specific, discreet tag sewn into the lining near the hem. I'd admired its delicate stitching. I frantically searched for it, my fingers tearing at the flimsy fabric. It wasn't there. My original dress, the one I had poured my heart and soul, and a significant portion of my savings into, was gone. Panic clawed at my throat. "Mom," I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. Where is my dress?" She averted her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Guilt? Defiance, crossing her face. "Oh, darling, don't be silly. This is your dress, I just had it altered a little. For a better fit, you know." My bridesmaids exchanged horrified glances. Sarah, ever the protector, stepped forward. "Mrs. Davis, that's clearly not the same dress. The fabric, the lace, everything is different." My mother's brittle smile fractured. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "It's exactly the same. You girls are just making a fuss over nothing. It's her wedding day, she's nervous. Let's not upset her." But I was beyond upset. I was cold with dread. My eyes locked with hers, searching for an explanation, a crumb of truth. But all I saw was a wall of evasion, of calculated deception. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating, punctuated only by the frantic beat of my own heart. The image of Michael waiting at the altar flashed in my mind. He would see this. Everyone would see this. The humiliation would be immense. And it was all because of her. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. My own mother on my wedding day had stolen my dress, But why? That question echoed in the cavern of my mind, drowning out everything else. My beautiful, perfect wedding dress gone, and in its place this cheap mockery. The joy of the morning had evaporated, replaced by a bitter, icy anger that was just beginning to simmer beneath the surface. I looked at the dress, then at my mother, her face now a mask of feigned innocence, and a silent promise formed in the depths of my soul. This would not stand. This is a non-story instruction. The following hours were a blur of frantic phone calls and whispered conversations. My mother, seeing the unyielding disbelief in my eyes and the growing anger of my bridesmaids, eventually cracked, though only slightly. She admitted in a hushed, defensive tone that she had indeed exchanged my dress for something more practical. Practical. That word echoed in my mind, a cruel twist of the knife. My wedding dress was a dream, a symbol, not a pair of sensible shoes. When pressed further, her story became increasingly vague and contradictory. She mumbled something about a great deal she couldn't pass up, about saving money I had already spent. It was clear she was hiding something far more sinister. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, immediately called the Beverly Hills boutique. The manager, a kind woman who remembered my excitement when I picked out the dress, confirmed that my gown had been paid for in full and collected weeks ago. No exchanges, no alterations had been made by them. My mother's story crumbled around her, piece by piece. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms. The humiliation, the sheer audacity of it was a burning inferno in my chest. How could she? How could she do this to me on the most important day of my life? As the minutes ticked by, the wedding ceremony loomed, a rapidly approaching disaster. Emily, always resourceful, had managed to find a backup dress at a nearby bridal shop that thankfully was open on a Saturday. It was beautiful, a simple A-line gown, but it wasn't my dress. It didn't have the sentiment, the memories, the sheer emotional weight of the one I had chosen. I put it on, feeling like an imposter, a stand-in at my own wedding. My mother, meanwhile, continued to flutter around, offering useless platitudes, her guilt manifesting as a frantic, almost manic cheerfulness that grated on my nerves. Every time she said, "Don't worry, darling, everything will be perfect," I wanted to scream. Perfect? She had just shattered a fundamental piece of my perfect day. But beneath the anger, a cold, calculating resolve began to form. This wasn't just about a dress. This was about betrayal, about her constant need to control, to manipulate, to undermine me. It had been a pattern my entire life, subtle at first, then growing more overt as I became an adult. This, however, was a new low. This was public humiliation, planned and executed by her. The wedding went ahead. I walked down the aisle in the borrowed dress, my smile feeling stiff and artificial. Michael, bless his heart, sensed something was off, but I managed to put on a brave face, whispering to him later that there had been a small mishap with the original gown. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the full, ugly truth. Not yet. Not on our wedding day. The reception was a blur of polite conversation and forced laughter. All I could think about was my dress and my mother. Her smug, knowing glances across the room, her almost triumphant air, fueled the icy fire in my gut. She had gotten away with it, or so she thought. But she hadn't. Not entirely. Because every smile she gave me, every toast she made, felt like a fresh insult. I knew with absolute certainty that I would find out what she had done, and I would make her pay. The question of why not at me. My mother had always been difficult. Selfish, perhaps, and definitely a spendthrift. She had a penchant for expensive things she couldn't afford, and a remarkable ability to convince others to foot the bill. But pawning my wedding dress? That was a level of depravity I hadn't imagined. Was it about money? Was it about jealousy? Or was it simply her desperate, twisted way of asserting control over my life, even as I was stepping into my own? The answers, I knew, lay hidden somewhere in her carefully constructed web of lies. And I was going to untangle every single thread. My honeymoon with Michael in Maui was beautiful, but a shadow hung over me. He noticed my quiet moments, my distant gaze, and pressed gently. Finally, one evening, watching the sunset over the Pacific, I broke down and told him everything. The stolen dress, my mother's flimsy excuses, the sickening feeling of betrayal. Michael, my rock, listened patiently, his hand warm in mine. He was furious on my behalf, but also pragmatic. "We'll get to the bottom of this, honey," he promised, his voice firm. "But let's enjoy our time here first." We deserve that, and he was right. I tried to push it aside, to immerse myself in the joy of our new marriage, but the need for answers, for justice, festered. When we returned to our home in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, a charming craftsman bungalow with a view of the Hollywood sign, my investigation began in earnest. I started with the obvious, my mother's finances. I knew she had always struggled, despite projecting an image of comfortable living. She drove a Mercedes she couldn't afford, wore designer clothes, often suspiciously new and then quickly gone, and dined at upscale restaurants in Beverly Hills, always treating me, then subtly suggesting I cover the bill. My father, a kind but ultimately passive man, had divorced her years ago, exhausted by her constant financial demands and emotional theatrics. He lived a quiet life in Santa Barbara, and I rarely discussed my mother's issues with him, not wanting to burden him further. But now I knew I needed to dig deeper. I subtly began asking questions, calling relatives under the guise of casual conversation. My Aunt Carol, my mother's older sister, who lived in Pasadena, always had a shrewd eye for family drama. "Oh, your mother's still at it, is she?" Aunt Carol sighed over the phone, her voice laced with weary familiarity. "Always chasing the next quick fix. I heard she got herself into a bit of a pickle with that new investment scheme she was bragging about. Something about a luxury condominium development in Palm Springs that went belly up. Lost a lot of money, apparently. And she borrowed from anyone who would listen. A new investment scheme. That was the first solid clue. My mother had always been susceptible to get-rich-quick schemes, fueled by her desire for a lavish lifestyle without the effort. This Palm Springs development sounded exactly like something she'd fall for. And if she'd lost a significant amount of money, it would explain a desperate act. But how much? And why my dress? The puzzle pieces were slowly beginning to connect, forming a disturbing picture. I also started noticing small details around her house that I'd previously dismissed. New, expensive handbags that appeared and disappeared, a collection of antique jewelry that seemed to rotate, a sudden insistence on paying for my coffee when we met at her favorite cafe, Verve Coffee Roasters, on Melrose Avenue, followed by a casual mention of a small loan she needed for emergency car repairs. She was clearly scrambling, trying to maintain an illusion of stability while secretly drowning in debt. The more I looked, the more glaring the signs became. Her usually impeccably manicured nails were chipped, her designer clothes a little too worn. She looked thinner, her eyes often darting, restless. It wasn't just a small pickle. It was a crisis. A crisis she had tried to solve at my expense. The thought made my blood run cold. She didn't just borrow from me. She outright stole from me, taking something irreplaceable. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about the sanctity of a moment, and she had shattered it all. I felt a surge of cold determination. I wasn't just looking for answers anymore. I was looking for proof. Proof that would expose her for exactly who she was. I was done being the naive daughter. My mother had just awakened a different side of me, a side that was far more relentless than she could ever imagine. The search for my dress, I realized, was just the beginning of a much larger war, and I was ready to fight it. The next step in my quiet investigation was to locate the pawn shop. My mother was notoriously secretive about her financial dealings, but I knew her habits. She preferred establishments that were discreet, upscale enough to not feel seedy, but desperate enough to deal in high-value items without too many questions. I started with the most prominent pawn shops in the more affluent areas she frequented: Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, and even a few higher-end consignment stores in Santa Monica, disguised as casual browsing trips with Sarah. I knew my dress was distinctive, a particular cut of ivory satin with a unique lace overlay. It wasn't something easily forgotten. Days turned into weeks. I visited dozens of places, feeling a growing sense of despair with each dead end. Every sales assistant gave me the same polite, regretful shake of the head. "Sorry, darling, we don't recall anything like that." I began to lose hope, wondering if my mother had sold it directly, or even worse, if it was now adorning some stranger on their wedding day. The thought twisted my stomach. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, as I was about to give up for the day, I decided to try one last place, a rather nondescript, but highly reputable, pawn shop tucked away on a side street off Rodeo Drive, not far from where my mother often went shopping. It was called Elite Pawnbrokers, and it had an almost clinical, high-end feel, more like an antique dealer than a typical pawn shop. The kind of place I thought my mother would prefer. I walked in, my heart thumping, the familiar scent of old leather and polished wood filling the air. The man behind the counter was impeccably dressed, with silver hair and shrewd, intelligent eyes. He looked like he'd seen it all. "Can I help you, madam?" he asked, his voice smooth and professional. I described my dress, giving as much detail as I could, the unique lace pattern, the specific designer, the custom alterations. I even showed him a picture on my phone. His expression remained neutral for a moment, then a flicker of recognition, almost imperceptible, crossed his face. He excused himself, disappearing into a back room. My breath hitched. This was it, I felt it. A few agonizing minutes later, he returned, carrying a garment bag. My heart leaped into my throat. He carefully unzipped it, and there it was. My dress, or at least what remained of it. It was still beautiful, but it had been handled. The lace was slightly crumpled, and there was a faint, almost invisible smudge near the hem. But it was undeniably mine. A wave of relief, quickly followed by a fresh surge of rage, washed over me. "Yes," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "That's it. That's my wedding dress." He looked at me with an almost sympathetic gaze. "We had a woman bring it in about a month ago," he said, his voice low. "She described it as an unwanted gift and needed a quick sale. She was quite insistent on anonymity." He paused. "She looked a lot like you, actually. Similar features, same hair color. My mother." There was no doubt. He showed me the pawn ticket, a discreet numbered receipt. It had a signature that, though stylized, was unmistakably my mother's, and the amount she had received for it, it was insultingly low. A fraction of what I had paid, enough, I surmised, to cover a pressing debt, but nowhere near its actual value. It confirmed my darkest suspicions. My mother had not exchanged it. She had outright pawned it for cash. And she had signed a document in her own hand attesting to her ownership, a blatant lie. "Is it for sale?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He nodded. "It's been here for the agreed-upon period. It was about to go on the market. We can discuss the price. I bought it back." The cost was substantial, almost as much as I had paid for it originally, but I didn't care. I needed it. Not just the dress, but the vindication of reclaiming what was mine. As I walked out of Elite Pawnbrokers, carrying my recovered dress, a powerful sense of clarity settled over me. This wasn't just about the money, or the dress itself. This was about my mother's complete disregard for my feelings, for my trust, for my happiness. It was a pattern of behavior that had always left me feeling secondary, less important than her own fleeting desires. And I was done. Done being the victim, done being manipulated. I held my dress tighter, a symbol of everything she had tried to take from me. And now, armed with tangible proof, I was ready to confront her. But not with tears or pleas, with cold hard facts, and a plan for retribution that would hit her where it hurt the most, her carefully constructed public image. She loved to be seen as the doting mother, the sophisticated woman of taste. I was going to dismantle that image piece by piece. The war had officially begun, and I had just won the first battle. But the main event was yet to come, and I intended to make sure she lost spectacularly. My wedding day may have been tainted, but my future and my self-respect would not be. The dress, now safely back in my possession, felt like a shield, a promise. My mother had no idea what was coming, and I was going to make sure she never forgot it. The chill I felt was not from the air, but from the quiet resolve setting deep within my bones. I waited a few days, letting the information marinate, allowing my anger to solidify into a clear, precise strategy. I needed to confront her, not in a fit of rage, but with the cold, unyielding logic of a lawyer presenting a case. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her actions, to understand that this time, she couldn't simply charm her way out of it. I invited her to lunch at her favorite spot, the Ivy on Robertson Boulevard, a place where she loved to be seen, to hold court, to project an image of effortless glamour. It was a strategic choice. She would be disarmed, believing it was just another casual mother-daughter outing, another opportunity for her to subtly solicit a loan or a favor. I, however, had a very different agenda. I arrived early, my reclaimed wedding dress carefully stowed in the trunk of my car, a stark reminder of what was at stake. Michael was aware of my plan, supporting me every step of the way, though he cautioned me to remain calm. "Just state the facts, honey," he'd advised. "Let her incriminate herself." When my mother arrived, she swept in, radiating her usual theatrical, charm air-kissing me on both cheeks. "Darling, you look lovely. So good to see you." She settled into her seat, already scanning the room for familiar faces, her eyes alight with the possibility of being noticed. We ordered, making polite small talk, but beneath the surface, attention hummed. I watched her, trying to see the woman who had once cradled me, taught me to ride a bike, read me bedtime stories. But all I could see was the woman who had stolen my dream, who had pawned my trust for a quick buck. After our appetizers arrived, I put down my fork, my gaze steady. "Mom," I began, my voice calm, almost detached. "We need to talk about the wedding dress." Her eyes, which had been sparkling a moment before, dulled slightly. Her posture stiffened. "Oh, that again, darling? I told you, there was a mix-up with the alterations. It was all a misunderstanding. Let's not dwell on it." She waved a dismissive hand, attempting to change the subject. "These scallops are divine, aren't they?" "No, Mom," I continued, unwavering. "It wasn't a mix-up, and it wasn't an alteration." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "You pawned my wedding dress." Her face went pale. The forced smile vanished, replaced by a look of shocked horror. For a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. Then, true to form, defiance flared. "That's a ridiculous accusation, Amelia. How dare you suggest such a thing? Your own mother. After all I've done for you?" Her voice rose, attracting the attention of a few nearby diners. This was exactly what I wanted. A public display. "Don't pretend, Mom," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "I know you took it to elite pawnbrokers on Rodeo Drive. I know you received a paltry sum for it. And I know you signed a document stating it was yours to sell." I pulled out the pawn ticket, discreetly, and slid it across the table. Her eyes darted to it, then back to my face. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her skin ashen. She looked like a cornered animal. I don't know what this is," she stammered, her voice thin. "It's clearly a forgery. Someone's trying to frame me." "No, Mom," I said, picking up the ticket. "It's your signature." And I spoke to the man behind the counter. "He remembered you. He remembered my dress." I looked around, making sure a few eavesdroppers were definitely listening. "He remembered you claiming it was an unwanted gift you needed to get rid of quickly." Her carefully constructed facade shattered. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but they were tears of self-pity, not remorse. "You have no idea what I've been through, Amelia," she hissed, leaning forward, her voice a desperate whisper. "The stress, the financial difficulties. That investment in Palm Springs, it went sideways. I lost everything. I had no choice. I just needed a little bit of cash to cover some bills. I was going to buy it back, I swear." "You lost your investment, Mom," I corrected her, my voice like ice. "And you stole my property to cover your debts. On my wedding day. You let me walk down the aisle in a cheap knockoff, humiliated and utterly betrayed. All while you were trying to salvage your own mistakes." The raw pain in my voice finally broke through her self-absorption, if only for a second. "I paid for that dress myself, Mom. Every single cent. It was a symbol of my independence, my future, and you turned it into a pawn ticket." Her gaze dropped, her shoulders slumping. She looked small, defeated, but still no genuine apology. No real regret for my pain. It was all about her suffering. That was her greatest flaw. "So what now, Amelia?" she asked, her voice raspy. "Are you going to tell everyone? Are you going to ruin me?" "I've already bought the dress back," I said, surprising her. "I paid the pawnbroker to get what was mine. So no, you don't owe me for the dress itself." She looked up, a glimmer of relief in her eyes. "Oh, thank goodness. See, everything's fine then, isn't it? Just a little misunderstanding, all sorted." "No, Mom," I said, a chilling calm in my voice. "Everything is far from fine. Because there's a cost for betrayal that money can't fix. There's a cost for publicly humiliating your own daughter. And you're going to pay it." I leaned across the table, my eyes locking with hers. "You are no longer welcome at any significant event in my life, starting with my upcoming wedding reception, which we're planning for next month. And after that, any future holidays, any family gatherings, any birthdays. You are banned." Her jaw dropped. "Banned, Amelia? That's insane." "I'm your mother. You lost that privilege the moment you walked into that pawn shop with my wedding dress," I retorted, my voice unwavering. "And if you show up, I will have security escort you out. And I will tell everyone exactly why. Everyone here at the Ivy, everyone at the reception, everyone we know. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what you did." The threat hung in the air, potent and undeniable. Her eyes, wide with shock, finally registered the true weight of my words. Her reputation, her carefully crafted image, was her most prized possession, and I was threatening to utterly destroy it. The Ivy, once her stage, had become her personal judgment hall. I paid for my meal, leaving her sitting alone at the table, a pariah in her own preferred kingdom, her untouched scallops growing cold. As I walked out, I didn't look back. I felt a strange mix of sorrow for the mother I wished I had, and a powerful, exhilarating sense of liberation. My dress was safe. My boundaries were set, and the long-overdue retribution had just begun. The war, I realized, wasn't just about winning. It was about reclaiming myself. My mother's reaction to my ultimatum was exactly what I expected, a whirlwind of histrionics, denial, and desperate attempts to manipulate me. First came the furious, tearful voicemails, accusing me of being cruel, ungrateful, and a heartless child. Then came the deluge of texts, ranging from pleas for forgiveness to thinly veiled threats about how much I would regret this. She even tried to enlist my Aunt Carol, who, to her credit, called me with a sigh and said, "Amelia, your mother's in a state, but frankly, you're not wrong." It was a small victory, but a significant one. Knowing that at least one family member understood, even if they couldn't openly defy my mother, gave me strength. Then came the orchestrated public appeals. My mother started posting passive-aggressive messages on Facebook, sharing vague sentiments about family difficulties and unforgiving hearts, hoping to garner sympathy. But I had prepared for this. I had subtly preempted her by confiding in a few trusted friends and relatives about my mother's struggles and her history of financial instability, painting a picture that, while not explicitly detailing the dress incident, set the stage for her erratic behavior. So, when her pleas for sympathy began, they mostly fell flat. People who knew her recognized the pattern. The final desperate gambit came a week before our reception. I received a registered letter, a formal-looking document from a legal firm. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was a cease and desist letter, claiming I was defaming my mother and threatening to sue me if I did not rescind my ban and apologize publicly. It was a laughable attempt, a last-ditch effort to scare me into submission. I took it to Michael, who, being a lawyer himself, though in corporate law, not litigation, immediately recognized it for what it was, a bluff. "They don't have a leg to stand on, honey," he said, shaking his head. "She's trying to intimidate you. Let me handle it." He drafted a terse, legally sound response, outlining her acknowledged admission of pawning my property and the documented proof, making it clear that any further legal action would be met with a countersuit for emotional distress and fraud. The letter stopped. The phone calls dwindled. The social media posts dried up. She had finally realized that I was serious, that I was no longer the malleable daughter she could easily control. The day of our wedding reception arrived, a beautiful evening at a rented villa in Malibu, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The weather was perfect, the decorations exquisite, and a joyous atmosphere filled the air. I had chosen a different, equally stunning dress for the reception, a flowing silk gown that shimmered under the lights. As guests arrived, mingling and laughing, Michael's cousin, who was working security for the event, approached me. "Your mother just arrived, Amelia," he said, his voice low and apologetic. "She's at the gate, insisting she has every right to be here." My heart tightened. I had expected it, but it still hurt. The hope, however faint, that she might actually respect my wishes had been foolish. "Thank you, Mark," I said, taking a deep breath. "Tell her that she is not welcome, and if she attempts to force her way in, you are to remove her." Politely but firmly. He nodded, gave me a reassuring smile, and walked away. I watched as he approached the gate, where I could see a flash of red, my mother's favorite color. I couldn't hear the exchange, but I saw her gesticulate wildly, her face contorted in anger. Then I saw Mark shake his head, unwavering. A few minutes later, she turned, a picture of indignant fury, and stormed away, disappearing down the road in her car. It was over. The physical confrontation had been averted. A profound sense of peace washed over me. It wasn't the peace of triumph, but the quiet satisfaction of having stood my ground, of having protected myself and my new life from her toxic influence. The reception continued, filled with genuine warmth and happiness. I danced with Michael, feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of her betrayal, of her constant manipulation, had finally been lifted. I knew this wasn't the end. Of our story, My mother would likely never truly understand the depth of her actions or the irreparable damage she had caused. She would continue to play the victim, to seek sympathy, to try and undermine me from a distance. But I had built a wall, a strong, unyielding boundary that she could no longer breach. I had reclaimed my self-respect, my agency, and the sanctity of my own life. The lesson was a hard one, learned at great personal cost, but it was a lesson I would carry with me always. Some relationships, no matter how deeply rooted, must be severed for your own survival. My wedding dress, once a symbol of a beautiful beginning, had become a testament to resilience, a reminder that even in the face of profound betrayal, one can find the strength to fight back, reclaim what is lost, and ultimately find their own true path. My life with Michael was just beginning, full of promise, untainted by the shadow of her deceit. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, unequivocally free. The end.